Okay, so it's possible that this stream just went online already. Let's see. I think it may have. Let's just see if we're all good here. Maybe we're not. That's a lot of blur. A lot of blur on the screen. Okay, so it's possible that this little excessive with the blur. Um, so I've got this plugin. I mean, you get used to like using Zoom and Skype with the tasteful blur, but good luck discovering that for YouTube. They don't have it, as far as I know. So I'm using a third-party plugin which allows me to crank the blur, but it's not very well done, really. There we go. Just so that we can eliminate the look of the mess, because we were doing a lot of stuff here in the house. We've been painting and cleaning and various other things, but it's sort of halfway through the process, so everything's in chaos. Worse than usual, you might say. In any event, it's been a while since I've been on here. Uh, I've been busy with a whole bunch of stuff, which I'm just going to outline. Some of the stuff's relevant to the channel. If you follow the channel at all, you may have noticed that from time to time, reasonably regularly, I post on the community section of the channel, right? So that does happen pretty regularly, sometimes every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, um, with whatever's going on. I tend to do it more in the member section. I mean, people kick in here and pay for the phone bill or whatever, so I tend to put more detailed stuff over there. Uh, yeah. So I've been busy, and there's been a whole bunch of things have been going on. Um, I think I'll just give you a quick rundown. This video is called Vital Energy. Um, and so I kind of want to start with that, but I'll get to that in just a second after I give the quick rundown here of what's been going on. Now, as some of you may or may not remember, last year, about maybe last January, I decided to take a couple of courses. One course I did was by this guy, Sifu Mark Rasmus, who is, he is, Rasmus is like, he is like, I'm thinking the camera's blurry here. It may not actually be the blur. Hold on a second. It may just be it may be the camera on the laptop is really dirty. Did that really help? I think. Hold on a second. Um, Rasmus is a Qigong master, Kung Fu master, probably, definitely a Tai Chi master. That's a little bit better. He's like a Tai Chi slash Qigong slash Kung Fu master. But what is interesting about that is he also, surprisingly, he's a Franz Bardon master. Franz Bardon master, which is obviously what I consider my kind of specialty, right? The Franz Bardon location. So last year I signed up for one of his courses. He's got some courses on Vimeo, which are like 50 bucks a month, and they're pretty extensive. And he has a long one on initiation into Hermetics, which I did. Then he's got another one on the key to the True Cabala, which I did. And last year, that was kind of like one of what I was thinking would be my focus is really get the key to the True Cabala stuff down, like really know it. And then he's got another one on the evocation book, which I haven't done. He's got another one on teacher training, which I did. And they were all really useful, but I wasn't really that impressed at the time, just because, like he seemed to be really just focused. Well, a couple of things. One, like I could tell he's authentic just because of the way he was moving his body. He was clearly having sort of like energy movements going on. So I'm like, okay, he's actually doing something. But there was a vibe that maybe I just wasn't connecting completely with his lesson, and so it was like I didn't really feel like I was learning anything that amazing, and there may have been like just a bit. It might have been a bit abstract at a certain point, like what? Like it didn't seem like it was really that impressive. Um, I've changed my opinion on that though. That's recently changed my opinion. So that's where we're coming back to with the vital energy stuff. Then I signed up for the Tibetan Phurba class, which is a Tibetan sorcery class, and then I signed up for the class 7 month class on Hecate, which just ended this week. Um, really, really interesting classes, and I've done other stuff too. Also, I did the Tibetan Buddhist stuff. Like I signed up for to work with the Tibetan Lama, who's in Argentina. So I've been working with that group a little bit too. And again, this sounds kind of like, gee, you're doing a lot of stuff. Why just like live in the now and like go inside, right? But part of that was because I, yeah, I just feel like I just want to get a vibe for the exterior environment. And it was well worth it. It was really, really, really interesting. Um, in particular, the Hecate class has been really surprising outputs from the Hecate class. Um, Obviously, Hecate is widely known in literature as a witch, right? She was in Macbeth, um, for example. Probably another, and I think she's pretty widely pointed out in literature. She was in the play Medea. Who did that? Euripides, maybe? I don't know who it was, but like Medea was one of the main witches of Hecate. So part of the reason I did the class was because like I was watching somebody one day talking about how that they were using the Qliphoth, which is the negative satanic aspect of the tree of life, as a way of working with the shadow. Now, I'm not really too interested in doing that kind of thing. But I thought it might be worth exploring something which seemed a little darker, just to get a sort of a vibe of what was going on there, you know? And so Hokkaido's got that kind of vibe. But what was interesting, because Jason Miller obviously has worked with Tibetan Tantra, he's kind of got a more balanced view of what Hecate was. And the reason he started working with Hecate was because she emerged in the Tibetan cemetery when he was meditating in a cemetery in Tibet, which was pretty interesting, I thought. So the class was really interesting, and it focuses on like Hecate has got all kinds of aspects, but primarily there's like three aspects to her. So like in the visualization of Hecate, you visualize her with three heads, kind of like you might do like a Hindu goddess. So you got a young girl, middle-aged, and then an older lady, kind of a thing, right? And so each one represents a different aspect, and that could also correspond with the different phases of the moon. And the idea with her is that she lives in liminal spaces. But what that really means, it means a lot of things. But what it really means is she's evoked as Hecate Uranus, Hecate Horizontus, and Hecate Chthonus, which means of the celestial Hecate, of the underworld, and then the horizon, right, which separates those two worlds. And what's interesting about the horizon as a symbol is that there's a tendency to think, okay, the horizon is kind of like a delimiter, right? And it's all celestial and all chthonic or underworld. But of course, if you look at the horizon, actually in the real world, there's like a sunset and a sunrise. So the horizon's actually got gradations in it too. So it's a sort of rich metaphoric playground to sort of for contemplation. And in addition, the way the class was done really had a lot of like amazing like evocative imagery in it. So you evoke the rivers and the winds, the like the sticks and the what's the other one called? The famous, the other famous wind, whose name I can't remember right now. So you evoke the winds and the rivers of the underworld and of the celestials. You evoke guardians, and then you evoke various triads of deities who kind of um, become the material workings of the meditational slash magical practice. And so that was really interesting. So some of the practices include working with like the graces who were the attendants of Aphrodite and also work with Hecate. And so the graces, Thalia, Euphrosyne, and Aglaia, were the sort of three divine attendants of Aphrodite who represent sort of rays of the goddess of love, kind of a thing, right? Of beauty and success and abundance and this kind of thing. So that was really cool. And then there were, there was evocations of the Gorgons and there was evocations of the Greys, who are the one-eyed. They were the old ladies who share one eye to see into the future. Um, and then one of the last ones was the Hesperides, which was really just an unbelievably beautiful evocation, which was the Hesperides are the three women who guarded the garden where Hercules had to go to get the golden apples. So if you've ever watched any of those old Titan films, that may ring a bell for you, right? So there was this beautiful, evocative imagery of all these amazing scenes, but with a sort of underlying sort of mantric slash tantric slash. Well, I would have to say that the whole class of that, it had a more of a sort of magical chthonic vibe to it. So sort of a sort of dark edge to it. So some people really get into the dark edge stuff, like, and for me, it's less of a that's less of an attraction. Although that was part of the reason I was interested in doing the class, just to see how that's worked. How is that worked around? Some of the stuff got pretty heavy, I guess. Some of the workings, and so that kind of stuff, I probably won't get involved in that too much. The baneful magic. I mean, I guess I get it, but I'm not really interested in conducting that kind of stuff since I'm really more interested in consciousness per se. But certainly a very interesting um, nexus, if you will, between these two aspects of this goddess, who obviously is more than just a magical um, witch, right? So if you look at oh, I can't actually share this with you, but if you were, if you were to look at the epithets of um, of Hecate, she's got many epithets. She's got many other names, right? Um, Enodia, Cleidoche, um, Anasa Eneron, Zerinthia. She's got all these other names, each name which is sort of a guide into different aspects of what she might do. Anyway, it was really interesting. I had some big experiences with that, the whole thing. And more than anything, it was quite interesting because obviously, like generally in my own meditations, I tend to work with just like pure energy and pure consciousness, right? And so this is really, I mean, in a way, it's kind of a step down, you might say, because it's not really dealing with the purity of consciousness. It's really dealing with things more of a sort of narrative slash archetype stage, um, which is kind of like is more colorful, but it's also got a huge amount of latitude for interpretation and sort of understanding and like what's actually happening here, and sort of getting caught up in the story, which may ultimately may not be that important, right? As you move through contemplation, but fascinating. Now the class just ended today, I think it is, but the that was 7 months. He's got two other classes, Hecate 2 and Hecate 3, which are both 7 months long too. And those are starting. He's decided to combine those into one big class, which starts next week. But I've decided that I'm not going to do that class. Um, I've decided just to sort of reorient a little bit. And I think it's mainly because I was looking at the contents of the class, and it seems to maintain this sort of chthonic sort of underworld orientation, which is interesting. You know, a lot of interesting stuff, and I'm actually quite behind in the coursework because it was such a rich course. There's a whole bunch of stuff I just didn't get around to yet. So part of it is because I'm kind of behind on it, and part of it is because the truth is I don't really need guidance to meditate into this stuff, and like a lot of the rituals are really based around mythological ideas, which I can contemplate by myself, really. And so I think I'm going to do that, and I'll probably keep working with the caddy, but probably more in the Oranic or celestial realms, as kind of like a celestial. I guess the word is psychopomp, right? Which is not a word I'm completely comfortable using, but the psychopomp is like a sort of spiritual spiritual guide, if you will, kind of thing. Like it's got almost like as an example, right? So the main thing with this course, it was really kind of like an example of how one might work um, in this in the Greek pantheon, right? And the whole Greek pantheon thing has really opened up quite a lot for me. It's been really beautiful and interesting, and I really like it. I think the Greek pantheon is what's amazing about it is it's still alive, right? The Greek pantheon is still alive and well. I mean, who would have thought that? So I was after I was doing the when I was evoking the graces, the attendance of Aphrodite, I got a real big vibe of Aphrodite from him. So I decided to evoke Aphrodite, and unbelievable floods of divinity coming from Aphrodite, just amazing, you know. And same with Hesperides, just stunning imagery. Meditating into that space, just really gobsmacking, as they say. Um, and the whole thing just really merits contemplation, right? So I mean, it might be possible to say you shouldn't meditate on this kind of stuff, but I think a lot of this stuff you really have to sort of do your own contemplations and make your own kind of evaluations based on the experience you're actually having there. Um, but generally speaking, the idea of exploring all those relationships, the mythological relationships, and the like evoking the sun and the Apollo and Mercury. I mean, that is just really cool. It's just amazing. And the experiences are jaw dropping experiences. Really amazing. Um, so that's cool. However, the other thing I was doing is, I mean, I could talk about a caddy all day actually, but I did name the video Vital Energy. So while most of the year I've been working on these other, I've been doing a lot of work, like actual work in the last year, but then the sort of magical slash spiritual stuff is really occupied a lot of the time. I mean, at the moment, I'm doing three ceremonies a day, basically, right? I'm doing a tantric Vajrayana ceremony, I'm doing a Hecate ceremony, and I'm doing an Aphrodite ceremony every single day. And I may add a Christian ceremony in here too, I'm thinking, um, just because the whole thing is so interesting. Um, yeah, I got this huge image behind here of the Buddha, which you can't see because of this over blurred image. But I got this from the local Chinese dollar store kind of thing. It was more than a dollar, but. but they have other sort of sacred style images, and that one's actually pretty stylish. But they had another one there, just like of Mary with Christ, and it's also just hugely evocative, right? Just amazingly evocative imagery, and so it does make you think that that pantheon, if you will, is worth exploring too. You know, it's just amazing. So it's the main thing is it's just such an unbelievable pleasure slash privilege to be able to move through these contemplative spaces, um, and sort of see the inner workings of what's actually happening. I mean, how is that even possible? It just blows my mind every time, to be honest with you. You know, and of course, all that ability to see those things probably, I would say, goes down to the Kundalini, right, and the energy transmission from Julian, from Chris Mitchell, and from Christopher Carlson over the years, as well as other people. I mean, how many transmissions have I had by now? Probably about 50 transmissions from various people. Um, However, as I was coming to the end of the Hecate class, I did remember that I had wanted to go. I'm just going to try and find the information here quickly while I'm talking. I had remembered that I'd wanted to return to the Sifu Mark Rasmus material because he had done some really cool things. He's got some really cool classes which I thought were going to be really interesting. Um, in particular, he's got one on the practice of magical evocation, which is like the second Bardon book. So I did the other two, but I missed that one. And so I was sort of perusing through it, but I was getting that same vibe I got the first time, which was that, you know, like for example, on the Key to the True Cabala class, it was really great, but some of those classes ended up being like an hour long, and literally 45 minutes of it's silent meditation, which is cool, but it's not exactly content rich. But it's good to see it, and it's good to see how they're doing it. But you know, and I noticed that when I was looking at the practice of magical evocation, I was sort of extrapolating. Look, because he's got the sort of titles and the sort of index of classes there, and I was thinking to myself, you know, that's going to be a lot of silent meditations there too, because in order to evoke, you have to contemplate, right? And so I was just perusing through some of these other classes, and he's got a bunch of classes I want to take. He's got one here, The Intrinsic Energies of Internal Martial Arts, but that's got over 250 videos in it, and some of them are pretty extensive, you might say. Then there's another one here which I really want to take, which I may take. I may actually sign up for it today. I'm trying to decide between a couple of different ones here. And this one is the Learning Elastic Force Qigong or Qigong with Sifu Mark Rasmus. And this class has, like I said, it's got like 800 videos. Wow. Now, part of the reason I haven't signed up for this already is one is, you know, my focus is really on consciousness. It's not really Qigong. I didn't think. And then the other one has got 800 videos, and it's on video on demand is quite hard to rip, right? So if you want to rip, it's quite hard to get them. So I've been holding off on doing that one because if you got 800 videos, I really want to be able to go back and study them. Now, I think his idea is you pay 50 bucks a month and you just keep paying the 50 bucks a month, but that's like anathema to my whole operating system. So I'm just looking to like watch, rip, and peruse at my viewing pleasure, you know. So he amazingly, like 2 weeks ago, I noticed he's got a new class, which is called the Elastic Qigong Instructors Workshop. So it's like advanced Qigong for instructors. But of course, you know, I think I know everything, so I thought I'll just take that, and I'll probably know everything. And I think that probably 90% I'm right on that. Like I pretty much know the whole thing. Now, some of you took classes from me, um, 6 or 7 years ago, I guess, and that was when when I'd been initiated, I became really aware of energy. And what really surprised me about Rasmus's class is he's talking about elastic qigong. He's talking about elastic qigong. Qigong. I mean, what that blows my mind. Elasticity. I mean, I remember talking about this in many of my videos, talking about the elasticity of energy, right? And like moving energy in an elastic way. For example, in the book Energy Work by Robert Bruce, he talks about moving energy back and forth over your chakras, up and down your legs. And he does, what's interesting about him, he works with energy like in a sort of imaginative way. He's working with a sort of astral imaginative concept. So he might think of like a, a ring of energy moving around your body or moving up and down your leg. Interesting. He's got other visualizations where he imagines a sponge moving up and down your leg. Interesting. He's got other ones where you might you visualize water or other different kinds of sort of elemental substances moving around your body. All cool, but it's all kind of shape or texture based, which is important by all means. But one of the things I'd spoke about, which I'd been playing with, is because I'm an animator, moving energy in a sort of linear way seemed really boring to me. And so one of the things you do in animation is you've got a tendency to like use acceleration, right? You get acceleration and overlap. So instead of just moving like this, you might move up and then you'd get like the sort of overlap as it comes to a stop, almost like there's a spring moving the energy, right? It's elastic, if you will. It's like elastic qigong. So what was actually happening back in the day is I was playing with the principles of elastic qigong without actually knowing it. But what's happened with this course, the teacher's training on elastic qigong, was I basically had my mind blown from the teaching. You see, when I watched those first classes of Sifu Mark Rasmus, they were very lecture based and meditationally based, which is kind of what I do, which is great, but it doesn't make great video watching. But he's actually a Qigong master. And so if you watch the Qigong stuff, I'm like, sorry, I'm mixing Qigong and Qigong here. But if you watch the Qigong stuff, he's actually he's an incredibly advanced master of Qigong. Super, super, super advanced master. So, boy, dude, my mind is blown because I missed a really basic concept. I didn't really miss it, but I didn't appreciate it. And so that's kind of what this video is about, I guess, is because, you know, I'm just sort of, I'm just coming to terms with this omission. So what happens is, well, first of all, Sifu Mark Rasmus. Why is he so incredibly advanced? Well, he did something, and I've heard of people doing this, and like Joe Rogan laughs about this sometimes. You often see these guys, like you'll see a Qigong master meeting with an MMA guy, and the Qigong master will claim that he can drop the guy from the MMA, and he gets his ass kicked instantly. You know, the MMA comes like, bah, it's finished. And you're like, okay, that's bullshit then. Okay. It's not bullshit. It's absolutely stunning what these guys can do, the Qigong guys. So that's the expertise of Rasmus. So what it is, dude, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like, trust me, this is so unbelievable. What he does is Rasmus is working with the elements. So over the years, I've been talking about using the elements in consciousness. So you can watch the what I've called the relative viscosity of consciousness, right? The relative viscosity of consciousness. You can watch the speed and the sort of viscosity, for lack of a better word, of consciousness. And by watching this, there emerges, it's almost like a quantum effect, is like consciousness knows you're observing its dynamics and mechanics. And when you do that, it starts revealing its internal mechanisms to you. And so, you do that and you think you're really advanced, but you're working in consciousness. It starts off in the imagination, it moves up into like the mental plane and often goes into like the Akashic plane. And you feel really advanced. But that's the thing is, it seems quite esoteric, and it is, and it's quite hard to achieve that probably if you haven't been initiated, unless, well, unless you're doing the qigong stuff, because this is quite interesting. So what Rasmus is doing is he is using the elements physically. So he's not using it in consciousness. So he's got like a group of people, and it's almost being run like a Tai Chi class or something. And he goes up to show people how to work the energy. And he's just holding their hands and he says to them, okay, I'm going to evoke the earth element. And he just sits there and he does it, and the people collapse on the ground. And then he'll bring them back up. He's like, okay, now I'm going to do the water element. And they start like falling down backwards and losing consciousness. And then he'll say, okay, I'm going to evoke the fire element. And they blast across the room. What? Like, that's kind of mind blowing to me. Because you often hear about people talking about the elements like me, but is it actually evocable in the physical plane? Well, apparently it is. And of course, now that I've seen that, it's like I'm seeing it everywhere, right? Everybody's doing evocation of the elements in the physical plane. And so it's really amazing. So the funny thing is like it's not like I missed vital energy. I was actually using it. Like in my video where I raised my kundalini and I moved out of my body to the temple of Satya Sai Baba, I was unwittingly using vital energy because at the time I was using my hands like a chapaka, like the shamans, and I was sort of shaking my hands over my chakras, right? Dun, 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 dun. And then I was using them to like scoop up energy around my feet and bring them up. And as I was doing this, the kundalini went absolutely crazy and blew out my third eye. That was because I was working with vital energy. And the vital energy combined with the astral, there's almost like a threshold. If you get enough of the vital, it pushes into the astral by itself. See, but I didn't really know that at the time. And what has happened over the years is I kind of stopped using vital energy because I thought it was like a crutch, right? I didn't realize it was like, I did like literally 30, 40% of Bardon's initiation of Hermetics deals with vital energy. And I've basically not been using it and just been using, I've been starting in the astral plane. As my friend Paul said to me today, it's like you're trying to start in second gear, right? You're trying to start and go in second gear rather than just using like the vital energy that's around us. Duh. And clearly it's powerful, right? It's extremely powerful energy. Now, what's interesting about this is in Rasmus's classes, he's training in how to identify vital energy not only in yourself and other people. And so, for example, one of the things he does is like when he's working with somebody, and it's not really a martial arts class, although he does teach it so that it might be useful for martial arts or for healing. But so, for example, if you've got somebody in front of you, like you can sort of sense somebody's intention, especially if you're in a sort of martial situation. You can sense like, okay, they're going for my leg, or they're going for a takedown, or this kind of thing. So you can sort of sense that kind of energy. But most people, of course, have they get no understanding of like what the elemental structure of that energy is, right? Now, it's easy to talk about this and think, well, that's bullshit, until you watch him use it, right? And so what he's doing is the same thing I was doing with the energy with the Chicapa stuff and with using elasticity, um, magnetism, and electricity. Is he's basically sensing the mental body of the other person and just slightly pulling it slightly, and you pull it just slightly enough that they kind of what happens is when you pull energetically on the mental body of somebody, it creates a slight separation between the mental astral and the astral physical matrix. That's Franz Bardon terminology, right? So the different koshas or the different bodies are sort of connected through these matrices, and you can separate these using the elements amazingly. And so this is really interesting too, because like knowledge of this makes things like transmissions. Well, one, it makes things like evocation really easy, right? Um, it makes transmissions of energy to other people really easy. Um, it makes martial arts really easy. It makes qigong really easy. It makes all kinds of stuff really easy because you're working with the vital energy first. Now, if you've ever done qigong, you might have noticed that. I mean, one of the first things is you build the ball between your hands. And I remember doing this back when I lived in Miami 20 years ago in a gym. And I was like, I was going to this qigong class for a few weeks before the teacher quit. And I remember like, dude, I can feel energy. This is crazy. And we were laughing. I'm like, how can I feel this? We're all laughing about it. Like, wow, I can really feel this, right? And you don't even like, how could that even be possible? And we blew it off like that. It's just a crazy phenomenon. But of course, that's how it starts. Now, what's interesting is he teaches teachers, and all those guys are doing transmissions to the students all day. So they'll do a transmission of vital energy awareness. They'll do a transmission of astral energy awareness. They'll do a transmission of akashic awareness. And so the way they do it is they sort of move into your kashas, and they just create a separation, and then push push with another elemental force, typically water element or magnetism, and they'll push that into the space. Or a lot of times, actually, it's air, so they'll use the air element to open the space up first, right? So they'll pull the mental body out of it because the mental body is kind of like the protective cover, which won't let anything in, right? So they create the separation, then use the air element to separate it out a little bit, and then they can sort of insert an energetic signature into that space that's being created, which sounds crazy. How could that actually work? But it makes a lot of sense to me. And the proof is in the pudding, of course, is that these guys they're knocking people down, and they're flying around the room just like it's crazy. Like when he uses the electrical energy, I mean, the people are literally in like paroxysms of like it's like they're getting an electric shock. Really stunning. And of course, it explains a lot of the stories we've heard. Like, so if you hear like Ram Dass talking about, oh, he was walking across the courtyard at the ashram of Mahariji, and he had like a boom, he had like a shock, and he had to go to bed because I think he passed out, right? And you're like, wow, it's so amazing. Now, of course, if you've got like what's the word they call that, like because I mean his guru was purportedly an avatar of the monkey god Hanuman, right? So if you got somebody with that kind of like energetic signature, it's obviously that kind of stuff is going to happen all the time because they've got a much higher vibratory signature, I guess, But it's clearly possible to do it using a more mechanical understanding also. And of course, I've been doing transmissions, um, and somebody wanted me to do one in December, and I didn't do it. I haven't forgotten about it. I'm just kind of on hold at the moment with that kind of stuff. But um, but this whole new technique is really interesting to me because when I do a transmission, I'm using vital energy. I guess I wasn't thinking about it as vital energy, but I'm certainly like using energy. Like, and I'm actually cultivating the energy. I mean, you can see my fingers here. It's a sort of cultivation I do. It's more of a sort of astral cultivation. Um, but what's interesting about the qigong technique here is it's kind of based on this idea of the building of the energy ball. So what's cool about Rasmus is he's doing this in this sort of Bardon style where it's pour breathing. So you pour breathe through your whole body, and then you exhale through your palms into the field of energy, the ball, right? And but what happens? The ball becomes like the sacred space, kind of like what Doctor Strange had, like how he was able to move into a space where he could do practice stuff. He could practice his new magical workings in a safe space. That's kind of what the energy ball is. It's kind of like a it's kind of like a safe space, and it's made of the vital energy. What happens is at first it's made of vital energy, but of course, the more you work with it, people start talking about a golden energy ball. As soon as you bring in color, you're moving into the astral plane, right? Because the vital is a very sort of visceral feeling. And the more you feel the vital, you can actually start sensing sort of energetic, magnetic, electrical currents in it. So the moment you start overlaying astral fields over it, it obviously starts gaining sort of extra power, extra purpose in what it can actually accomplish, which is really, really interesting. The cool thing about it, of course, is that vital energy is really, really easy to work with. It's literally like being in first gear. It's like you can just like accumulate it anywhere. And it's crazy. I was walking around the supermarket today, just like, okay, let's just accumulate vital energy. It's like, oh, like up on top of my cart was just like an energy sink. Unbelievable. And so this is the kind of thing you can just practice all the time. And that's just with the vital energy. And you're walking around with this vital energy ball, and you haven't even attached any any astral information or bodhicitta or anything to it. It's just there, like virgin energy, waiting for a direction. So yeah, it's been a big deal seeing how he does this. And interestingly, I was talking to my friend Paul today, and he was saying, "Did you see the latest Joe Rogan chat with Mel Gibson?" I'm like, "I saw some of it, but he was like, Mel Gibson was talking about this, and he sent me a clip of it, and sure enough, there's Mel Gibson talking about how he went to a qigong master, and the qigong master lifted him off the ground using energy, like levitation." And Mel Gibson was so freaked out afterwards, he went to go see a Jesuit priest because he's like, "What was that like? Demonic?" And the priest said, "Listen, did the guy heal you?" And he was like, "Yes." And he's like, "Well, it's not demonic then." He's like, "Because he's not trying to pull anything from you. He's helped you, right?" Which I thought was quite progressive for a Jesuit priest. But there you go. If you know, you know. Um, but of course, like I was saying, now it's like you start seeing it everywhere. And also recently, Guru Viking had a guy on like a month ago, Damo, another guy like a Sifu guy, Qigong master, who also was talking. He was talking a lot of stuff. He was saying stuff like, "Well, the imagination is not important." He's like, "Qigong's the real world," and I was like, "This guy doesn't know what he's talking about." But I saw him in a video yesterday. Same thing. He invites somebody to touch his leg, and they channels electric energy through his leg, and the guy flies across the room. Unbelievable. So yeah, so I'm really excited about this vital energy stuff. It's really, really, really cool. Um, and the idea of cultivating it in the physical. So I already know what's possible with this because I've already done like the spinal sweeps and the Kundalini 3 or 4 times probably. Um, but I hadn't thought about it in terms of the sort of Taoist way of like. So I may actually explore this in the Taoist terms, which makes sense since I'm doing the Vajrayana stuff right now, and really cultivate it. Start thinking about the dantians and this kind of stuff, and working with the energy in that sort of way. Um, it's just so unbelievable. I mean, how is this stuff even possible? Because you think you're already at the pinnacle of knowledge, and it's like, no, did you miss a really important thing? So the interesting thing about the vital energy, for example, is as Sifu Mark Rasmus was saying, since he is also not just a qigong master, he also evokes all the spirits of the Kabbalah, But I mean, one of the things, or a few of the things in Bardon's book, for example, is you can like cultivate vital energy. And this is something I mentioned in the community the other day. Is it seems to me that most energy workers are probably working with vital energy, right? With a bit of the astral and vital is probably all you need to be an energy worker, really. You know, and at that level, you are working with consciousness, but it's not really. To me, the mechanics of it are still quite earthly, right? It's quite earthly based mechanics at that stage. Um, but you can use that vital energy, for example, to charge amulets, or if you've got a magical circle, you build up the energy and then push it into the magical circle. Um, if you're going to be focusing on Kabbalistic letters, you can build up the vital energy and then use the vital energy as like a sphere of focus for the contemplation, right? Because you can basically, it becomes really easy. I mean, I generally just start off in the astral, but if you've already got this like energy ball, it really, the vital energy just really it like attracts the astrality really easily. It just, they sort of, they want to flow together. It's just, they just want to work, right? So you build up and it just pushes into the threshold of the astral, and then you get these like huge spiritual experiences. It's really quite quite astonishing. So I think I'm probably going to be putting quite a bit of time into this. I'm probably going to purchase his other course here. He's got the course. I did his teacher training on Elastic Force Qigong, which is really good. But there's a couple of his. I mean, it's kind of stupid. I don't want to go through 800 videos because I still feel like I know most of this stuff, but I don't know a lot of his qigong information. And so he's got a lot of like qigong tech, which augments this. So, for example, one of the things he does, he's got some practices where you're feeling like magnetic energy, and then you clutch into electric energy, right? So there's like a transmission for, or not transmission, but like a translation, a transposition between like magnetic and then suddenly pushing through pause, using pause as a way to initiate the transition from one energy type to another type. And so, and this is kind of the way he works with mudras too. The mudras become um, containers and carrier waves for different energy structures. But in conceptually, as as a conceptual container for vital energy, it becomes like really obvious. Additionally, you know, I haven't done this in a while, but I was having some spontaneous. Some of you remember it's like 5 or 6 years ago. I was having like some spontaneous um, shamanic energy workings, which just emerged. I don't know why, but basically, it's like it's vital turning into to astral. So getting control of this stuff, and it may mean I'll have to learn qigong formally, I guess, just to just to feel like I'm really got that stuff under control. Um, and of course, most of the qigong stuff is going to be, I mean, what I already do. It's going to be meditation. It'll be like standing meditations, pose based meditations, and this kind of stuff. But it becomes super fascinating. So that even doing something like this actually becomes meaningful, right? Because you can actually feel the energy. And then like what does it mean? And you can evoke concepts into the vital energy. But because the vital energy is on the physical plane, it affects people instantly, right? So the thing with astral energy is you can imagine stuff all the day and imagine, no, I'm moving this over to you, but it's still going to pass the boundary from the imagination into the physical body, right? It's a bigger ask. It's a bigger ask. Whereas if you just keep the energy focus into the physical, it's just way easier working that way. So it's really, really exciting. It's really exciting to do this. So, hey, Vegan Dolls, buddy. Hold on. Um, it's really exciting to think about this whole aspect of the vital energy. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing here. Pretty quickly, I'm going to be working on the working on the vital energy as a way of um, just sort of like rounding the corner, or what's that? Just crossing the T's and dotting the I's on the consciousness um, project. So that seems like a pretty cool thing. And plus, part of my project for this year, and part of the reason I was doing the ceremonial stuff, was I was really trying to push the consciousness knowledge into the physical plane, right? So I've been doing lots of ceremonies, not ayahuasca ceremonies, just like homemade ceremonies. So doing ceremonies, doing evocation, doing meditation, doing prayer, but doing it sort of more formally, right? And doing um, offerings and this kind of stuff, which has been, it was uncomfortable at first. At first, it was like weird, but now I'm like quite into it. And so this whole aspect of the qigong really pushes it into the physical plane just that bit more, which is um, which is really cool. Of course, this is I've been talking for an hour now, and this is just one aspect of some of the stuff I've been doing. Like obviously, like I was saying on the community page, whole bunch of really interesting things there. I just read this book, The Psychology of Buddhist Tantra, by Rob Priest, who's a pretty well-known writer, and he's a psychologist, a Jungian psychotherapist who's also a practicing advanced Vajrayana guy. So really, really cool perspective there. That's one of the better books I've read, integrating those ideas. That's really worth a read. um, yeah, so a lot of really cool stuff going on there. And yeah, and just mainly because of the workload in the last year of work, and then all this, like doing all these classes, it's been hard to get on here to really focus. And then with the kids living here now and stuff, it's been difficult to get on to do stuff. Um, interestingly, hold on a second. Interestingly, I'm going to have a lot of free time probably. I teach at a school here in Chile, and the school closed down forever in December. So that got closed down, and it looks like I'm formally unemployed, and hopefully the projects. Most of my income comes from projects, so hopefully it won't be that big a deal. But that does take a bit of time every month, doing those things. So that will be gone, and I'm going to be doing quite a lot of work in the next month. I got a whole big bunch of stuff I'm doing here with AI. Um, Crazy stuff. Um, I've mentioned this a bit in the community, but like I'll give you a little rundown for the people who came here this long, just to tell you some of the projects I'm working on. So one of the projects I was thinking about was I've been wanting to write another book, right? And so I had a couple of book ideas. The main book was called The Order of the Jewel, and The Order of the Jewel is a book about about how consciousness becomes um, crystalline or jewel like at certain stages of contemplation. And it's a very beautiful experience when you can work with this. And so I was thinking about writing this book, and then I was working with ChatGPT, and I was trying to think about a few different things. And one of the ideas I had was that, I often have a lot of my chats, which I do here, often have pretty good thoughts in them. But of course, I tend to ramble, right? And so what I did was I thought, I wonder if I can transcribe my videos, run the videos through AI, and turn it into a transcript. Well, yada, yada, yada. What happened is, um, using ChatGPT, I wrote some programs which allowed me to rip out all the SRT files from YouTube, SRT files are the files which have all the transcripts, and basically because you've got the closed caption, there's a transcript of the video. So I was able to rip all those. There's lots of like formatting and stuff, so we ripped all the formatting, and then I had ChatGPT write it with the strict delimiter that it can't change any of my ideas. It's going to be my ideas, but then I could use it as a reference for this Order of the Jewel book. So we were going through this, and I've been bouncing ideas off ChatGPT a lot, and it was really interesting. But then like a whole bunch of other things came up, and so the other project, because all of a sudden I started seeing these possibilities. So what's interesting about this whole project about ripping the SRT files, it's not, I thought this was genius when I did it, but there's like 4 or 5 companies doing this. And what they're doing is they're ripping SRT files, rewriting them and letting people, for example, one of my ideas was instead of doing it for a book, is do it as a business operation. And so you could rip SRT files and allow people to repurpose the text. So, for example, I can take this, which is an hour long, and have AI rewrite it into like a LinkedIn post or an Instagram post with AI images and the whole thing. So it becomes a sort of business tool. So you can talk online and then repurpose information in a sort of useful way. There's a couple other companies doing it already, but my way is sort of more the way I'm thinking about it in this context is more of a sort of vertical market thing for like business to business kind of idea, which might be kind of cool. Which has nothing to do with what my idea was of the book. But what happens is once you start getting into this, you start seeing the possibilities, and it became like really interesting. But the other interesting part of this was that I was rewriting it and I was trying to like play around with, okay, I'll rewrite it as a LinkedIn article. And I was like, well, maybe I'll rewrite this. I was like, I said to chat, I'm like, rewrite my, I had one big one, like the one, my chat on the 36 tattvas. There's a few of my chats. I think there's a lot of really good information that, which nobody else talks about. So at one point I said to chat, I'm like, hey, listen, rewrite this, but make it sound like I'm Terence McKenna, right? Use my ideas, but have it sound like Terence McKenna. And it came back with these amazing dialogue. It sounded just like Terence McKenna. It was all my ideas. It was unbelievable. And that gave me an idea for another book, which I might do it because it's really easy and it's still all my ideas, but it's like a fun interpretation of the channel. And so I guess I won't be able to use this title, but my working title at the moment is um, Terence McKenna Analyzes Ayahuasca Magic. And so what it would be is it would be going through what I'm going to do is I'm going to say to ChatGPT, listen, here's my video. For example, this video is called Vital Energy. I'm going to say that, listen, I want you to analyze this as if you were Terence McKenna being critical about what I'm saying, right? And so the idea is I'll be able to go through this and get like about 20 chapters of Terence McKenna ripping my experiences apart, maybe saying how they're not valid or how they're quite interesting, how they relate to his. And it's kind of like a deconstructive kind of interpretation of some of the material on the channel. Now it sounds crazy, but you know, about 30 years ago there was a book. There's that book which we all read in English lit in high school called Beowulf. Beowulf's that old story of like it's like the first book ever written in the ancient English language, where the book is about a monster attacking like some Vikings and killing everybody, and then they have to defend themselves. But you know, 30 years ago, somebody wrote a book called Grendel, and it was the same story written from Grendel's perspective. And it won all kinds of awards. Like, oh, wow, what a fascinating way of thinking about the story. Because it gives you a different perspective. So that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it. It's like a playful way of using the channel content, co-opting Terence McKenna's name because it's interesting, co-opting his style because ChatGPT totally knows Terence. It's like what was amazing because you know Terence he's got this flair for metaphors and stuff, and so he's using my ideas and adding all these Terence-esque metaphors. It was amazing. So I think it would be a really fun thing, and it's actually something I could pull off really quickly because I've already got all this. I've ripped the entire site. Every video has been ripped and converted into text. And so I could do it really quickly. And then there'd be a big process of editing it to make it like cohesive and like Yeah, well, that I was saying this to ChatGPT. Chat was saying there might be a Terrence McKenna copyright issue, of course, right? So you couldn't say it like Terrence McKenna. Oh yeah, my original idea was Terrence McKenna reflects on ayahuasca magic, and Chat was saying that's a great name, but you can't do it for copyright something. So you'd probably have to do it like in the style of you could change the title so it wouldn't be a copyright infringement, right? And because it's not really his words, it's my ideas, right? I'm not talking about the eschaton at the end of time, or I'm not co-opting his ideas, right? It's just his style. Um, so I want to talk. Frankly, I think my ideas are better than his because they're not really my ideas. You know, the stuff that I've got are really it's really sort of coming in from consciousness kind of stuff, you know. Yeah, like you were saying, I think it's a clever way of doing it, and that'd be cool. And then the other idea, of course, while I'm doing this, we come up with another idea, and I say we because I'm kind of like I'm talking to ChatGPT about everything all the time. I actually switched over to DeepSeek this week, the Chinese one, which is way. It's hard to say it's better, but I think it's better in some ways. Um, but who is sending me messages? Probably my mom. Um, but the other idea is, as I was going through some of these transcripts from my videos, there's some of the videos which I sort of have a sort of real emotional resonance with. And there's one of the videos I love, which is called The Shipwreck. It's on the member site now. And The Shipwreck, I got on one day about 5 years ago, or 6 or 7 years ago. I don't know when it was. It was when I just moved to this house 7 years ago, I guess. And I was talking about an idea. And it's like a narrative I just made up on the spot about how it was my phone. Yeah. Um, hold on. I hope it's not my stepdaughter. She's, she went away yesterday for a couple of days and she might be stuck outside at the gate. Let me see. Um, it's her. Hold on a second. Uh, yeah, she's not outside. She looks like she wants me to go pick her up, but I'm going to finish the video. The last idea was the shipwreck, and in the shipwreck, um, the story of the shipwreck is and it's done like a narrative in the shipwreck. It's done like in the style of like, well, there was once they discovered like a shipwreck at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, right? And nobody knew what it was, and they were scared to go down because they weren't really sure what it was, and there was some kind of signature coming from down there, right? There's a signature of energy, and obviously you get all the skeptics like, oh, maybe it's a UFO or maybe it's a treasure ship, and nobody knows what it is. Nobody wants to go down there. Anyway, in the original video of the shipwreck, it turns out it's none of those things. What happens? Oh, in the shipwreck, what happens is it turns out when they get down there, it was a treasure ship, and the treasure ship had been scuttled. They'd scuttled the ship because they thought they were being attacked and they thought they were going to lose everything. So instead of doing that, they destroyed the ship and they went to the bottom of the ocean. But the energy signature was still working. And it was like some kind of metaphor for like the inner child, right? So it's like the inner child, it gets sunk, the ego sinks it, and it stays down there. And as I was discussing it with Chad, we were talking about it, and Chad GPT was saying to me, he's like, this is kind of like The Alchemist. And I was like, I hadn't read it, so I went and read The Alchemist, which I didn't like, but it's popular. And I was like, yeah, there is something about that. And to me, it reminds me a little bit of the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance a bit. But then we started thinking about this idea, like maybe this narrative structure could become the Order of the Jewel, right? Because originally I was thinking the Order of the Jewel was going to be it was going to be more of a sort of book, which was sort of a method of working with meditational objects. But Chat was saying to me, he's like, dude, it's so much better to use like what's the word? Not a narrative, like hold on a second, I'm getting like 20 messages from my stepdaughter here. Hold on a second. Um, please come and pick me up. Let me see. Um, no, no, we're cool. Um, like it is, it is a sad metaphor, but it's one that I really relate to frankly, right? Um, and So we started thinking that maybe it'd be better to use a sort of narrative structure rather than a methodical thing. And so the idea was that you could do this, and then you could have like a well then it started to, there's a whole bunch of ideation done on this. So of course you could have a team going down to find the ship, but the team's got four people on it, and the four people and it might be hard to do this, but the four people could be the four masculine archetypes, right? The warrior, the lover, the magician, and the other guy, the king, right? And so there could be like the whole thing could be like it could be a journey down down to discover, because what happens at the end, it's a treasure ship, right? And it's kind of like that film The Abyss, whereas at the end they bring the whole thing up to the surface, and it's the biggest treasure that they ever had. It was just a misunderstanding, right? So that's kind of the I think it's a really great story. The problem is I don't know if I have the focus and time to do it. It'd be much easier to yeah, it'd be much easier to just like do a sort of methodology book, which was my plan originally, right? Because this is more into, well, it's more narrative-y. I'd have to focus on it because it pulls in a lot of like serious stuff. And while AI can write a lot of stuff for you, you can't trust it with this kind of stuff. It's too important. You'd have to really write it. You have to write yourself. Whereas on the other hand, if I do the Terence McKenna stuff, it's like I'm just curating it. I can just make it as funny and off the wall as I want with all my ideas in it, and he's like ripping me apart, right? I mean that's hilarious. Terence McKenna disses ayahuasca magic. That's funny, right? And easy to do because I can just crank it out and then do some rewrites and really like curate it. It'd be beautiful. Whereas the Order of the Jewel is really that's important, right? That actually will take contemplation and a whole bunch of stuff. Plus, I think the problem with ChatGPT is it's excellent at bringing in new ideas, but then they're ChatGPT's ideas, and it's like you have to resolve them, right? I mean, you can have ChatGPT resolve them, but it tends not to do well in it doesn't do well in fine tuned. It's a subtle area, and plus I feel like I feel like I've got like a teaching here, and that's not something I'm going to give over to ChatGPT. It's like that's if it's something funny like Terrence McKenna, this is ayahuasca magic, yeah, that's hilarious, totally do that, right? That might sell something just because it's so funny, but the other one's actually an important project, so I don't know if I'll end up doing it or not, but it's something that really is interesting. So yeah, so there's that, and then the funny thing is I was talking about this project about the vertical business thing, right? About using this technology. So originally, what I did was I wrote Python scripts, and I used to do programming, but I don't program anymore. So I had ChatGPT do the programming. So what I did was I ended up becoming a Google Cloud developer. Then I became an OpenAI developer. And then we wrote all these scripts, we ripped all the SRTs, and we started like, what I did is I started ripping them from a company. So what I did is I worked with this agency out of Washington State, and I spoke to their principal guy. I was telling him the idea, and he works with, I mean, generally the projects I do for them are for like big companies like NVIDIA and Intel and this kind of stuff, right? And he's like, dude, he's also got a big, well-known financial company. Um, he's like, uh, he's like, put something together for me and let's present this to them next month. He's like, we can sell this. I'm like, yeah, okay. So what I did was I thought I better, because basically I'm just working from the command line in Windows. So I'm basically just running Python scripts from command line and doing all this stuff from, it's not sexy. So I ended up doing a whole web page which does all this stuff, but it got really complicated. And so I kind of like got stuck. I can move ahead, but I started like revisual, like how am I going to work with this? I need to simplify the concepts, blah blah blah, right? So so yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff going on, and like Stefania's been calling me, trying to get in touch with me, and I'm not talking to anybody because I've like all this stuff going on. I'm cranking here, just and it's all really exciting. You know, it's like fun and like so cool. And the AI stuff's crazy. I mean, I learned the Sanskrit alphabet in the last 4 months just using AI. So what I was doing is like, there's a Sanskrit letter assigned to every petal of the chakras. So I just thought, I wonder if I can learn that. So I just said, you know, I just logged on. I got GPT in my telephone, and I just said, dude, give me the Sanskrit letters for all the chakras. And I just did it this morning again because I haven't done it in a couple of days. So I just did it again today. And where is it? Chakra Bija mantras. Yeah, that's actually it did it. Oh no, there it is. So you do this, and you get all the little Sanskrit things in there. And what you can do, and so what I was doing is each Sanskrit letter's got a different aspect of the chakra, right? And she's not temptress. Stefania's a lovely lady. She's kind of like, no, you can't see my telephone there. It's like, but she was wanting to chat, and I sent the time, you know, because it's going to be like an hour of a chat. But anyway, my point is I was having a big discussion with somebody today about like how AI is dangerous and everything else, and it certainly is. But you know, there's going to be a certain time here where we can really use it to accelerate our understandings. So, for example, I've been using it. What I did with is I just uploaded all of Bardon's books, and I'm using it to like not eviscerate, but like some of those books are pretty dense. So it's really great to like upload like Keys to the True Cabala, and then sort of do a search like for which which letter vibrations correspond to this vibe, and then it will give me like a table, and then I just see it all at once. So you're not scrolling or turning pages trying to find like what is the letter which corresponds with divine love, and which kasha. It's like it's too complex, so now you can totally take the structure, deconstruct it, and reorganize it in a way which is really meaningful and useful, you know. It's excellent. I mean, I feel you can make really big advances spiritually using AI as a help, you know. And I think I'm almost done here, but I will tell you one funny last story here, just funny. So when I went to Peru 4 years ago now, 5 years ago, I don't know when it was, 4 or 5 years ago, I was there and I bumped into a lot of ayahuasca magic people there, people from this channel who were all at Stefania's house. And this one guy who I guess I won't mention his name, but nice guy. He was in one of the videos I did. He was in a couple of videos from Peru. A nice guy. But he was telling the story at the time, like he'd gone to Africa to do some iboga, and when he was in but like he was everything went crazy. The tribe he had to live with a tribe in the jungle in Africa, and they tried to poison him after 30 days of like being naked in the jungle. It was crazy what happened to the guy, and like you know it was like Rambo getting the guy out of there, you know. And so then when we met in Peru, it was like Rambo getting out of Peru. We couldn't get out of Peru, right? And so that was a big nightmare getting out of Peru. And then like he sent me a message the other day, and he was like, "Dude," he's like, "I'm in Colombia." I'm like, "Oh no, what happened?" And he was like, "He's like, dude, me and my buddy we got attacked by the cartels," and he's like, "I had to wrestle a gun away from one of them and start shooting, and then like." They got away. They got away, but he had all these. He sent me some pictures. He's all bruised up from the beating he took from the cartels, and because he was down there, I don't know, trying to. I don't know, man. I think if you're down there looking for if you're down there looking for plant medicine, I tend to think you might not run into the cartels. But I think it's probably pretty easy to run into some of that kind of stuff if you're looking for other things, right? I mean, Colombia is a fun place, right? It's got everything the superficial man would desire. And certainly, if you're looking for those things, you're going to run into cartel types pretty quickly, I would imagine. In any event, 74 minutes. First video in like 3 months, probably. Um, Um, I'll try and do more videos. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a crazy time here the next few months. Fingers crossed, everything goes really well. Uh, Life is good. It's very exciting. Uh, I'm really psyched about where my knowledge is right now and where my state, my sort of spiritual state is at the moment. I feel really good about everything. Positivity, high vibe, all that stuff. Um, and I feel I'm kind of like on the cusp of some big breakthroughs here, just generally with a lot of sort of like legacy stuff. Anyway, I'll I never forget about ayahuasca magic, so I'll be back. Don't know when, but I will come back. So that's it for now. Much love. Great to see you, vegan dolls. Hope you're well. Peace out, you guys.